United Bank for Africa has appointed Lochnath Mishra as Chief Executive Officer of UBA UK, effective February 2nd, 2026. The bank says the move strengthens its international footprint and positions UBA UK as a strategic hub for regulatory excellence, trade finance, and correspondent banking between Africa and global markets. Mishra brings decades of international banking experience and previously served as CEO of ICICI Bank UK. And UBA says its leadership will enhance cross-border trade and investment flows, linking Africa to the world. And who better to shed some more light on this and prospective developments than the new appointee himself. CEO of UBA UK, Lochnath Mishra, joins us now from London. Good morning, Lochnath. Many thanks for joining us on the Global Business Report today.
Good morning. Pleasure to talk to you, and thank you for inviting me to this show.
Certainly, you're most welcome. Now, you are taking over UBA UK at a time when global trade patterns are being reshaped. What is your assessment of the current state of trade finance between African economies and the key international markets where UBA operates, that is? And also, where do you see the biggest opportunities for growth over the next 12 to 18 months?
Thank you so much. That's an excellent question. I think the global trade order is changing. The supply chain is being rewritten. But more importantly, even from Africa's perspective, there are significant changes. Europe finds Africa now to be a much more stronger and reliable partner in terms of supply chain in their backyard. South-South trade is growing. And Africa is changing from being a raw material supplier to a supplier of finished good and processed food. We also have seen significant activities around renewable energy, fintech, and other services area. So in that sense, on the whole, I think there are significant changes. Africa free trade area is a monumental change in Africa. This is one of the largest trade agreement. So in that sense, there are significant changes and significant positive upside. But while the trade from Africa is expected to grow faster than what the other countries will grow, we also have significant gap in trade finance. So according to estimates, there are gaps in upwards of $100 billion. We have also seen some of the international banks scaling back their operations in Africa. So in that context, I think there is a significant requirement, there is a significant opportunities. As you know, UBA is present in 20 countries in Africa, so significant large local presence. And that UBA combines with its international presence across 4 locations. UBA UK is one of them. So we believe that as a bank which has significant and a strong local foundation and knowledge, combined with international presence, we are very well placed to provide international trade finance and access to capital market for African entrepreneurs, SME, and traders. So I believe that it's an exciting time. I believe UBA has a significant role to play in ensuring that Africa is connected to the globe. Thank you so much.
Right, exciting time indeed. And, as we know, African economies are increasingly looking east and diversifying their traditional Western partnerships. Given your vast experience in the Indian banking sector, how do you see UBA UK facilitating triangular trade flows between the UK, Africa, and the Asian markets like India?
That's again an interesting question. As you know, South-South trade is growing for Africa and for others also. And it's not only because Africa is looking east and looking south-south. I think also the major player in China, India are looking at Africa. They are also enthused by the fact that once Africa free trade agreement is implemented, this offers a large market in terms of 54 countries, 1.3 billion consumers, and upward of $3 trillion of economy. So I think it's win-win for both. The other nuance is the fact that some of these countries have products and services which match the requirement of many African countries in that sense because of the similar growth status of various countries. So in that sense, many of the products and services from these countries are quite suitable for African markets. So in that sense, it becomes win-win for both. I have significant experience in Asia, more particularly in India. Over last couple of weeks, I have been talking to many Indian corporates, and many of these corporates have shown interest. Some of them are already there in Africa. They want to grow, and some of them want to discuss about how do they get into Africa. So I believe that both with the UBA's local presence as well as my personal understanding of the market, we are in a good position to help some of these entrepreneurs and corporates gain entry into Africa and grow their existing businesses.
Great. And, we are beginning to see, and you also alluded to this earlier, more of a focus on development finance and trade rather than traditional aid lately. In light of this, how do you see the UK's partnership-based approach to Africa creating opportunities for UBA UK? And in which sectors can your activities most effectively support sustainable, non-extractive growth in African economies?
So my view is there is a place for aid and donation because that serves the immediate requirement of a community in immediate urgent need. But the investment part is much more interesting for Africa because that is what creates jobs, that is what creates opportunity, and that is what takes a country to a sustainable growth pattern. We are a big supporter of Africa capitalism is what we call. I think that is the ultimate solution for ensuring that our economy and our countries grow on a sustainable path. UBA UK is very well connected to various institutions in UK, various investors in UK, and we are having conversation with them in terms of how do we combine their requirement of putting up a manufacturing plant, putting up a services unit in Africa, and connect them with the local counterparts and the local presence what we have in 20 countries in Africa. So on the whole, I think from the bank's business perspective, it's an interesting change, interesting shift in pattern, and that helps us to do much more with our international investor going into Africa.
Now, a shift is certainly very key, but let's look at some core realities now, Loknath, as well. Many international banks have scaled back their African operations in recent years. What is UBA's competitive advantage in this space, and how do you plan to capture market share in UK-Africa trade finance, that is?
You are right. I think because of variety of reasons, many of the international banks are scaling back their operations in Africa just when Africa is growing and is more in need of trade finance and other kind of finance. In that sense, the gap becomes bigger, gap becomes wider for other players to fill in those gaps. UBA, with its presence in Africa and outside, plays a big part in ensuring that we meet those requirements, we meet those gaps to the extent possible. We also partner with many development financial institutions which are active in Africa. We also partner with other banks to ensure that most of the parts of ecosystem, trade finance ecosystem, are helped and supported because of the global linkages of finance and capital what we have. So in that sense, we play a role of a gateway to the African trade finance. And we work not only with UBA Group, but we also work with African corporates as well as other banks to ensure that we maximize the potential opportunity what we have.
Right. In light of that, cross-border trade, we can't have this conversation without touching on cross-border trade, which, of course, as you know, is another sore point. With the African Continental Free Trade Area gaining momentum and major markets such as the UK, US and China seeking to establish themselves in African markets, how are UBA UK and UBA Group facilitating intra-African trade that then routes through London's financial infrastructure?
Indeed, I think Africa Free Trade Area is a significant, monumental change, and it can become a catalyst for growth of Africa if it is implemented well. As you know, currently the trade in Africa, intra-Africa trade, is a very small percentage of total trade if you compare it with what other countries and continent have. So, for example, Africa probably would be around 12 to 15% versus 60% in Europe. So that's the kind of runway, that's the kind of opportunity intra-Africa trade has. I'm encouraged by the fact that the program and the agreement is moving in a positive direction. As you know, once this agreement is finalized, there will be a lot of trade and there will be growth of trade between the countries. And as you can imagine, we are present in 20 countries in Africa. So that enables us to connect buyer and seller in two different countries in Africa. And we believe that we are well placed to play a big role in intra-Africa trade because of the fact that we have a large presence there. UBA Group also has signed a memorandum with the free trade to provide significant financing to SMEs. That's a part of our commitment to help the country grow. We also have signed agreement with PAPS to ensure that we are the bank which allows money to move from one country to another country for settlement. So we believe it's a significant monumental change for Africa, and UBA Group in a way is committed to play a big part in that locally as well as internationally, because a lot of this trade also will need settlement in hard currency in some of the cases, and London can play a big role in terms of providing FX settlement, in terms of providing foreign currency liquidity and some of those services for this trade. Also, because of the increase in intra-Africa trade, the African international trade will pivot towards more manufactured good, processed good, and that will give extra value-added trade finance requirement for many of the companies, and that is where the international offices of UBA will play a part.
Right, so it sounds like the necessary steps are already in place. Now let's come to you, Loknath. UBA talks about Africa's economic integration into the global economy. Now, 5 years from now, what does success look like for UBA UK under your leadership?
Thank you so much. Just to highlight, UBA UK is incorporated and regulated in UK. It is a OECD bank with significant credibility in terms of international market. Many local corporates in Africa who deal globally, and many banks in Africa who have clients who deal globally, look at UBA UK as a very credible partner to deal with. Just to give a sense, many corporates who are supplying into Africa are happy with a letter of credit confirmed by UBA UK because it's a UK bank and a OECD bank in that sense. So I would say that UBA Group and UBA UK has a distinct and unique advantage and play in this whole globalization of African economy. As the economy grows, the globalization will increase, people will travel, a lot of import and export, the kind of goods and services the population will demand will be of different order. And as it changes and as it grows, I think UBA, with its deep commitment to the local economy and deep linkages to international financial market, to ensure that we are able to play the role of a bank which is a gateway to Africa. In my mind, I don't measure success by any particular number. I do not measure successes in terms of a particular market share in that sense, which will happen for sure. But in my mind, success comes when African corporates and African banks treat UBA UK as the bank to go to when they are thinking any of their global and international business. And likewise, when investors across the world think of UBA when they think Africa. In my mind, that's the parameter of success, what I would measure myself with.
Right, really great to hear that. And it sounds like a lot more ahead for UBA UK then. And we will certainly keep our eyes peeled for newer developments as time goes. But speaking of time, it is unfortunately currently against us. And I want to thank you, Loknath Mishra, for these insights and updates. And congratulations on your new appointment. We'll see you again very soon, certainly.